Oh hey girl, so what would you rather watch? This? Me talking with good audio quality, terrible video, or would you rather?
This incredible video, hi, but bad audio quality. You decide.
So was your answer neither? Okay, that's cool, I get it. Well, if I had to choose, I'd definitely choose the better audio quality. I could not deal with listening to me sounding horrific. I feel like this is especially important in longer form videos like YouTube. Here we are, on YouTube, talking. So what I want to do is compare a couple of different common microphones to see like, what one's better? The Shure SM58, Behringer C1U, iPhone 11, Razer Seiren, mini, ultra compact, condenser, microphone in black, Apple wired headphones. Is it worth paying some more money for a good microphone? Or can you like get a cheap one and it sounds fine? Or maybe use your phone? Who knows? So I'm not an expert on audio stuff, but like I've done a couple of university papers on like studio recording. That was very fun. And I used to be a DJ, so that's like audio. So let's get into some basic audio tips first, and then we can go have a look at these different microphones and see if it makes a difference. I'm excited. It's going to be an adventure. So generally, you want the microphone to be close to the sound you're recording. Wow. Like for example, I'm talking now, the mic's pretty close to my face, you can probably hear me, but if I go like this, oh hey girl, how's it going? Can you hear me? Do I sound terrible? Probably. So having the mic closer to you improves the signal to noise ratio. So the signal, which is like your voice, like hey girl, it's me, and the noise is like the rest of the room, like things going on. Okay, great, so we've got the mic close to us. Okay, the next step, you want to make sure you're not distorting the sound by like turning up the volume or the gain too high, which could cause clipping of the audio. So this is when the audio goes a bit too high and it reaches like the ceiling of how loud audio can be, and it just flattens off and you just hear this digital distortion, which sounds terrible. So you want to make sure that you don't see any red lights just anywhere in general. Red lights are bad. That means it's too loud, turn it down. I don't know, avoid like rustling the mic. This sounds terrible, don't do this. And then finally, once you've recorded your audio, you want to be able to process it to make it sound a little bit better. You could use an EQ, take away some bad frequencies. You could use a compressor, which reduces the distance between the louder sound and the quieter sound, so it's a more flat and kind of consistent vibe. Or even a special type of compressor, like a deesser. And this just lowers the volume of like S sounds, which can get a little bit too intense. Like incredible. So now we got the general vibe of how to record audio. So let's have a look at the different microphones and how am I going to compare them. Maybe I'll give a fun sciencey sort of fact about sound or recording for each one. That sounds pretty fun. So you get to hear each microphone and you get a fun little piece of science sound knowledge as well. So yep, enjoy that. Okay, to begin, we have this microphone, which is the microphone I use in like all of my videos. It's beautiful, I love it. It is the Shure SM58. Had a quick look on the Rock Shop, you can get it for $229. So like a little expensive, but not like thousands of dollars. So that's cool. This bad boy is a real famous microphone. It's used pretty much in every live show that you'll see. And why is that? Well, let's have a little look at how a microphone actually works. So this bad boy is a dynamic microphone. The sound waves, they come in, they reach the microphone, and they wiggle this diaphragm up and down, they vibrate it, and attached to this diaphragm there's a coil, so that vibrates as well, and inside the diaphragm there's a magnet. So this vibrating or movement of the coil inside a magnetic field causes an electrical signal. And this electrical signal has all the information from the sound that came in, because that causes the vibration, which causes the electrical signal. Incredible. We have sound and now it is electrical. Okay, here we have the Behringer C1U. I think these bad boys cost about $125. Okay, so a little cheaper than the SM58. Now the difference with this microphone is that it's a condenser mic. Ooh, not a dynamic one. So in a condenser mic, the sound waves still come on in, they find the diaphragm, and they wiggle it, vibrate it, and there's this like backplate that sits like a small distance away from the diaphragm. So when you're moving the diaphragm or wiggling it around, it's changing the distance between the diaphragm and the backplate. So in condenser microphones, there's this constant electrical charge applied to the system. This is currently coming through this cool red cord from a computer, but there's also like phantom power that exists that you can do it through like an external audio interface and power comes in somehow. Because there's this electrical charge over the system, when you're changing the distance between the diaphragm and this like backplate, you're changing the capacitance, which therefore changes the voltage, and then your signal is recorded in this change of voltage. And then that goes back into the computer and it's like, hey, I've converted sound into an electrical signal. Very cool. So generally condenser microphones are more sensitive than dynamic microphones because you're just moving the diaphragm a little bit, as opposed to in like the dynamic microphones where you have to move this diaphragm and this coil all around it, so it's like harder to move. So this increased sensitivity usually means that condenser microphones are used for like recording purposes rather than like live sound events. So the next microphone we've got is the iPhone 11. This bad boy cost like $1,400 when it came out. Ooh, a bit steep, honestly. Like for the quality you get as a microphone, I don't know. You could probably get a better deal elsewhere. Let's talk about a fun thing called the Nyquist theorem. So this is a very important thing if you're trying to turn an analog signal into a digital signal. For example, my voice creating an electrical signal, which is analog, and then that has to be turned into the digital world, like with ones and zeros, you know? So when you're turning an analog signal into a digital one, you have to choose like a certain sample rate, like how often you're gonna take a sample and be like, yep, that's a value, then go to the next little bit on the sound wave and be like, yep, I'll take that value, because it's not continuous, right? You gotta take specific set values. So it pretty much says if you wanna be able to describe some frequency, call it omega, cool. You have to sample at a rate that's 2 times that value, 2 omega, to be able to describe the original analog signal. So this is why you see this number like 44.1 kilohertz. Where does it come from? Well, the human ear can hear about 20 to 22 kilohertz. You times that number by 2 and you get like 44. Wow. So it's able to properly reconstruct the analog signal into the digital world by sampling at 2 times the highest frequency that we can hear. Ooh. And if you sample at a frequency lower than this Nyquist frequency, you get this thing called aliasing, which means you're going to lose some of that high frequency content, and maybe like the frequencies can get folded back on itself. So if you like have a frequency of like, I don't know, 1000 hertz, it could be like yoink, it actually comes out at 500 hertz maybe, and you're hearing that, but it's not actually there. So yeah, making sure you got to sample it 2 times the frequency you want. Very cool. The next microphone we have is a Razer Seiren mini ultra compact condenser microphone in black. Wow, and it's about $100. Positive thing about this one is you can plug it straight into your computer with a USB cable. Very nice. That was the same with the Behringer one. However, my SM58 mic, you need like a little box, like an audio interface, and you need to plug the XLR cable in, and in that box it turns it from analog to a digital signal, and then it can send it to the computer with a USB cable. So if you don't have an audio interface, then maybe a USB cable straight to the computer might be a better vibe. So a fun thing about microphones is that there could be this proximity effect. Okay, what's that? So earlier I said that it's good to be close to the mic, because obviously like, hello, that didn't sound very good. But due to this proximity effect thing, if you get too close to the microphone, like maybe get nice and close up like this, hey girl, how's it going? You get an increase in bass frequencies. Interesting. So why does this happen? Okay, let's break it down. So lower frequencies have a longer wavelength. So like 250 hertz, quite a low sound, that has a wavelength of about 1.4 meters. So obviously that's quite large, and that's larger than like my mouth where the sound's coming from. I hope my mouth's not over a meter long. So you can say that these low frequencies are coming from a single point source because the wavelengths are so much bigger than the place that they're coming from, my mouth, hi. So when they propagate outwards, they form like this sphere of like waves coming out, right? And you can do some math and find out that the amplitude, the loudness of the signal, decreases with an inverse square law. But let's think about high frequencies. These have a much shorter wavelength, real skinny boys, so you can't really think of them as coming from a point source because they're smaller than the actual, my mouth, hi, the source. They pretty much come out like flat sort of wavelength, and they don't have like that curve that the lower frequency has. So that means that the high frequencies don't drop off in their like loudness by this inverse square law. So the high frequency sound's amplitude decreases less within the same amount of distance. And many microphones measure the difference in the pressure between the front of the microphone and in the back of the microphone. So you can see that if you're having a really loud low sound at the front, but then when it travels around to the back, it's going to decrease in its amplitude quite a lot. There's going to be a big difference there. So therefore, the microphone produces a much larger signal for their low frequencies. So instead of holding the microphone right next to your face like this, if you hold it a little bit further away, you get a much flatter frequency response. Cool, and the final microphone is the Apple wired headphones. So you can probably get these for like $15, so pretty cheap. Nice. And I'm holding them like the cool kids do, you know? Like this. You've seen these people? Yeah, that's sick. Okay, cool, let's talk about the 38% rule. So what is the 38% rule and what has it got to do with like sounds? So this says that you should sit 38% of the way into the room to get the best sound quality, or the most linear frequency response. Okay, cool, so how do they get this number? It's kind of just like a trial and error sort of thing. I don't think it's a very scientific thing. But the premise is that in a room, you probably have like some walls. They're probably flat. So you got a flat wall at the front and the back. And sound waves, they can form these things called standing waves, which is when an entire wavelength fits in that space and it kind of goes back and forth and it's in there, it's vibing. Or maybe an integer number of wavelengths could just like fit in this space and go like back and forth because there's these flat surfaces that it can bounce off. So if we think about the simplest example is that you've got a wavelength that comes up, goes down and goes back up over the course of the room. So right in the middle it's going to go through 0 and that means you're not going to hear anything. So this is a node in the wave and that means that there's no sound going on here. So if you're sitting right there, you wouldn't hear that frequency. And this can happen again, but if you can fit 2 wavelengths in there. So there's going to be a node at 1/4 and there's also going to be another one at 3/4. So you don't want to be sitting there either, because then you won't be able to hear those frequencies. Row. So they pretty much just found a nice sweet spot that's kind of like not sitting at any of these nodes, and it just happens to be at like 38% of the way into the room. So you go 38% of the way in, lovely, you vibing. I actually did an assignment based on this, which is quite fun, in 200 level at uni. Designed a studio in this course for this assignment, so like if you want to have a look, here you go. So yeah, this is pretty fun. We've got some rooms, control room, the live room. I tried to make the walls not parallel to each other, so to avoid standing waves. We've raised up the floor, we've put something in the ceiling, and that's going to help stop these standing waves and soak up any unwanted frequencies or whatnot. Anyone's a builder? Want to hit me up? Want to build it? Wowee, that was pretty fun. I hope you enjoyed listening to all those different microphones. I had quite a good time listening back to them. It was quite cool. I didn't really know what to expect. So here's my opinion on these 5 different microphones. I'll give them a nice ranking for you. I love a good ranking. Okay, so the worst microphone I thought was actually the Apple wired headphones. That's quite interesting. I thought these Apple wired headphones would have done at least a little bit better than just the iPhone by itself, but I found that the headphones actually had quite a lot of noise. Like there was a lot of like hissing in the background, which kind of made it sound not great. The sound quality was probably about similar to just the iPhone by itself, but because the headphones had an increased noise, I'll put them in last, and therefore the iPhone comes in 4th place. Okay, very cool. Okay, cool. So that leaves us with the 3 actual microphones that actually did sound better than the 2 things that weren't properly a microphone. Okay, that's good to know. So in 3rd place, I've got the Razer microphone. I found like this microphone was missing quite a lot of the low frequencies, which kind of made it sound like pretty cheap and not great, but it at least sounded better than an iPhone. So there's that. Now just above the Razer mic, in 2nd place, we've got the Behringer microphone. Now this sounded slightly better than the Razer microphone, but it also had an increased amount of noise, which I feel like overall puts the Behringer one pretty close to the Razer microphone. But in 1st place, by a long shot, is the SM58. Wow, it's beautiful. I love it so much. It's good to know that if you spend a little bit more money, it actually sounds a whole lot better. Nice. Yeah, so overall the sound quality of this is just so much better than any of the other microphones we tested. I feel like for the price that this is, compared to the other 2 like proper microphones, which were like, I don't know, $100 less, I sort of think it makes a lot of sense to like skip that like $100 sort of range of microphone and just kind of go either for your iPhone or like some headphones that are just lying around. They recorded audio and it sounded like good enough that you could hear me. I hope it wasn't too bad. But if you want to buy a microphone, you may as well spend a little bit extra money, like in the $200 range, and you can get so much better audio quality, and then it's like worth you actually spending some money. And then wow, incredible, you'll be able to sound as nice as I do. Oh hey. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you liked the fun facts about microphones and some sound things. See, I managed to sort of make it still sciencey when I just kind of was talking about microphones. So that was sick. There we go. If anyone wants to know more about sound, recording, how to do things, hit me up. I could make a video on it. That's fun. I like recording things. So yeah. Okay, hope you enjoyed, bye!